Hello, everybody. ODAT Nerd here. Welcome to the devlog for Devember day 12, the Wednesday before the spooky Friday the 13th. No, not Friday, Thursday the 13th. Dang it all to heck. I'm not editing that out. Nah. What happened today? Well, I actually managed to do some work between the devlog last night and today, wherein I tweaked up a little bit because it was bothering me, the notification system that we put in place last night. So basically, I pulled in an enum library that backports the standard library Python enum stuff that was added in Python 3.4 because, as we know, Sublime uses Sublime. Python 3.3 doesn't have the enum module. I pulled a version of that backport into the package just to use. I know that there's a dependency that I could use that I'm not using that. There's actually a second dependency. There's a Sublime lib dependency we could use that includes that implicitly. We're not doing that for right now. We're keeping this sweet and simple. And with that in place, I modified the notification system so that when it invokes the notification, you get told why you got notified. And I have a list of those over here. One is to tell you that you have been connected. The next is to tell you that you attempted to connect, but the connection did not work. The third is to say, hey, a message has arrived. And the last is to say, hey, the connection has been closed. Connections close as a result of errors. So you'll also get one of those immediately after the disconnect one, perhaps, or sorry, not the disconnect, the connection failed. There may be more work to be done there. Perhaps we want to have a starting connection event, and so that you can say starting connection, connection failed, or connected, and then you know when the connection is closing. That's neither here nor there. I also put back in the code from last night so that every time a message gets read, it dispatches a notification right away. And I also put in back in the code that uses set timeout to defer the call from our network thread back onto the Sublime main thread, just to keep the network thread unbogged. And realistically, maybe we want to use the async thread for that instead of the main thread. Maybe we actually want to do something completely different with that. Um, I'm guessing that for the simple expedience of uh, getting things done now, we don't really care going forward. If a person actually wanted to have a separate thread just for handling network events, their callback could use some method that shoots the message from the main Sublime thread into that thread so nothing gets bunged up. We don't really care about that. I also modified the test thing to actually use those. So that gives us appropriate notification type action in our system, and it actually works quite nice. The rest of the time we spent working through the design for some degree to how we want the build system to work. Now, I went over that in perhaps excruciating detail in the stream, so you can jump on in and watch the replay if you want to see everything that's happening and the reasoning for it. But we'll just summarize it really quickly here. Although such a build system as ours that's executing something remotely could be done in a way where you just have direct access to uh, the remote files, like say they're on a file share and you're editing them on this machine over a Samba share or some sort of SSH file system. And then when you hit build, it just needs to send a command to the other end. I believe that's something that you could pull off with SSH. It happened, we were helping somebody with that in the Sublime forum just the other day. My own personal use case, that wouldn't work, and I'm building this because it's something that I want to learn how to do and that I would actually use for my own stuff. And I don't have the ability to do that, so I'm not going to build one that can do that, at least not off the bat. So instead, what we're going to do is specify a mechanism in the build that specifies exactly what files in the local project need to be gathered up and shoved across the network to the server for the server to have a copy so that it can run a program over on the server. I'm looking over there because that's my server, if you will, the machine I'll be doing this on. It's a monitor that's slightly to the left of where I normally work, which is these two monitors slightly to the right of them. I have a 3 monitor setup here, plus a laptop and a laptop and a laptop and some tablets. It's Electronic Central in here. In any case, how exactly are we going to do that? Now, there are systems in place in Sublime to know how to add files to the sidebar. Specifically, you can provide one or more folders. You can specify what files and folders should definitely appear, so only those will appear. You can specify excludes so that everything except those things appears, and you can apply includes and excludes, in which case everything that's included is the only thing that's included, but only if it doesn't also match something in the exclude folder. And that's going to provide us a list of files, and that would be the list of files that's transmitted to the server the first time. And then every time after that, we would only have to transmit the files that changed, presumably, right? That's a modification and optimization for further on down the line. And in order to make this easier to use, we'll say that you can specify directly in your Sublime build file exactly what folders to use. So you have absolute control. If you don't want to do that, it'll fall back to using the folders from the current project that you have open in the window when you're executing the build, which is perhaps the easier way to go if you're working on one project for one thing. Then that's how that would work. And if you had more than one project in one window, you'd have to specify a build to do it. That is no, never mind. This is a complicated system. We don't want to make it more complicated by making it complicated to configure. In case you're not using an actual project, but you have folders open, then it'll just grab the contents of all of the open folders and shove them across. That's the least configurable of all of them, but if that's the way you want to work, that's the way you want to work. You have 2 other ways to go about it if you want to, and that's cool. And if you don't even have any folders open, then it's just going to grab the current file and send it across, which for simple purposes like running a Python file on another system is probably exactly what you need and possibly the best possible use case. We also briefly discussed how when you run a command, you can specify things in the build that will allow Sublime to capture errors so you can navigate to them in your thing and your windows. And when you open them, you can get inline build errors. If we're building on the server and not on the local machine, then any error messages that it generates are going to have the wrong paths. They might even be the wrong style. The server might be running Windows and you're running Linux. Not only is it going to be a path on drive C or drive D, their slashes are the wrong way. So we talked about a system whereby we'd be able to capture the errors as they're coming through and rewrite them on the fly so that the file names, any errors that are relative to folders that we know about can be rewritten to look like they were on the local system, which does include, if you're using file regex and line regex, doing a little bit of buffering of the output before it gets transmitted instead of just streaming it as it happens. I didn't mention it in the dev stream, but we're going to assume line buffering for everything just so that we don't have a lot of tiny fragmented packets flying around. Maybe that's an option that you could turn on if you just want every time a read happens to just shoot it out. But yeah, we'll be able to capture errors and rewrite them with a little bit of buffering in cases where it's needed with a configuration option. And that's just because build regex and line regex, if they're both specified, work together and it has to find line regex, then look backwards to find file regex to know which 2 lines in the output match. So if that's the case, then we need to buffer some number of lines to be able to look back. And that'll be a configurable thing, so you can configure it for your tool and get the best possible output. That's really all we got for that. This actually went fairly longer than I expected it to at 9 minutes. So we're going to cut it off here and just also mention that going forward for the next few days, we're going to be working on the task of gathering together all of the files that are going to be needed as part of the build, seeing how we can pull that off, how we can represent them, and with thoughts to how they could be dropped on the remote system and be cross-matched with each other. So look forward to that. Code is actually already for tonight pushed up onto the GitHub repository, which is, of course, linked in the description below. So until tomorrow's devlog or tomorrow's live stream, depending on which one of these things you view first, please have a sublime day.